And so, hello then. Welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spy Knight, and in these podcasts, I love talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Saturday Night, the new film all about the 90 minutes leading up to the very first SNL episode, the very first Saturday Night Live episode. So, let's get into it, shall we? Saturday Night, as I've already said, is his new film all about the 90 minutes leading up to the very first Saturday Night Live episode. And this film is directed by Jason Reitman. If you're not familiar with Jason Reitman's name, when I just said it there, if you're not familiar with his name by name, he has directed such movies as Up in the Air, which is so good, Juno, which is very enjoyable, Thank You for Smoking, which wasn't for me, Young Adult, which I really liked, Ghostbusters Afterlife, which I don't care what anybody says, I really enjoyed Ghostbusters Afterlife, among many other movies. And Jason Reitman has also directed episodes of the US version of The Office, so there's that. And this film I was very excited about, but probably not in the way you may think, because I am not a fan of Saturday Night Live. I've seen a couple of clips of Saturday Night Live, which I found funny over time, but for the most part, from what I've seen of Saturday Night Live, and granted I haven't watched a lot of it, but from what I've seen of Saturday Night Live, it's not for me. I don't find sketch comedy that funny usually. Again, there are some exceptions, but usually I don't find sketch comedy too funny, and I don't really like live comedy either, because there's just something about it always makes me nervous for the comedian, or the comedians in the case of Saturday Night Live. It's like something could go wrong, and then it all feels very awkward, and you feel awkward watching it. So I've never really been a fan of live sketch comedy, and again, I have seen bits of Saturday Night Live which I've enjoyed in the past, but for the most part, Saturday Night Live isn't for me. So you may be questioning, why then? Why, Spike, were you interested? Why were you excited even about watching this film? And the simple reason is, I thought it looked brilliant. The trailer for this film came out, I want to say in October, maybe not in October actually, but it came out sometime around last year. I think it may have come out in summer of last year, and I remember watching the trailer for this film continuously one morning. I just kept rewatching it because I thought the teaser trailer for the film was so well edited. And I couldn't believe how excited I was about it, because I'm not a fan of SNL, but the film made me excited about watching a film about the very first SNL. Then I did a bit of research into it, and I was like, oh, the first SNL, there's quite a bit of a story there, and there's some very interesting comedic actors which were involved in the first SNL, like Chevy Chase, who's quite controversial to say the least, but has had quite a fruitful career in comedy. Dan Aykroyd has had quite a fruitful career in comedy, and John Belushi has had quite a fruitful career in comedy as well, and Billy Crystal was there, at the very first SNL recording, and look how famous Billy Crystal is now. All these people, what's his name? Oh, I'm forgetting right now, he played on Let It Be. Billy Preston was at the first SNL recording. All these famous people that were there. Jim Henson, the guy behind the Muppets, he was there as well. I didn't even know this until about I think it was around about like October or November of last year. I did a bit of research into the first SNL episode. I was like, actually, yeah, this has made me more excited about seeing the film. Plus, it's directed by Jason Reitman, and I think Jason Reitman is a very good director. I don't love all his movies, but even something like Thank You for Smoking, which isn't for me, I can appreciate the craft and how well it is made. Again, it just didn't work for me personally, but at the same time, I love Up in the Air. I think Up in the Air is a genius film, and I really enjoyed the likes of Juno, Ghostbusters Afterlife, and so on and so on and so on. Furthermore, I was really excited about seeing this film because of the cast. It's got a stacked cast with the likes of Gabriel LaBelle, which many people might know as a young Spielberg from The Fabelmans. He plays the young Lorne Michaels in this film. He's got a habit of playing young, iconic figures. Lorne Michaels is the person who, he came up with SNL. He was the person behind it. He was a driving force behind making SNL happen. You got Rachel Sennett, who's a rising star right now. You've got Dylan O'Brien playing what's his name, Dan Aykroyd. I just said he there a couple of minutes ago, and I almost completely forgot it. And you have supporting performances from the likes of J.K. Simmons and Willem Dafoe. This film has a huge cast. I'm not going to list right now, but yeah, there's a lot of famous actors in this film playing very famous people, because you have someone in this film playing Chevy Chase, you got someone in this film playing John Belushi, you have someone in this film playing Dan Aykroyd, someone in this film playing Billy Preston, and so on and so on and so on. It goes on and on and on. And I was lucky enough to see this film, to get a chance to see this film at a preview screening, because I don't think it actually released in the UK until the 31st of January. But I got to see it on the 21st of January, so there you go. I got to see it 10 days before it releases in the UK. And when I got that chance, I jumped at the opportunity because of how great this film looked, and because I am a fan of Jason Reitman's previous work. So that is what I went to go and do the other day when I watched this in the cinema. And the Google plot synopsis for this film goes as follows. Tensions run high as producer Lorne Michaels, played by Gabriel Bell in the film, and a ferocious troupe of young comedians and writers prepare for the first broadcast of Saturday Night Live on October the 11th, 1975. And that's pretty much all I need to know about this film before seeing it. And honestly, I loved this film. I thought it was such an enjoyable watch. I mean, it's not without its flaws. It's not without its flaws. And if you don't know who's who before you watch the film, like if you don't know anything about these real life people, if you don't know who Jim Henson is, if you don't know who Andy Kaufman is, if you don't know who Dan Aykroyd is, if you don't know who Chevy Chase is, if you don't even know who Lorne Michaels is, you might be quite confused whilst watching this film. And I knew who about 90% of the characters in the film were, 90% of the real life people that the characters are based off in this movie. I knew about who 90% of the characters that were based off real life people were in this film, so I was able to get my head around that. And the film does do a good job at explaining who's who at this point in history, if you will, because, you know, yes, some of these names like Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi and Chevy Chase are big names now, but they weren't necessarily big names then. I mean, they weren't big names at all, really, in 1975, and the film does a really great job at explaining who's who at which point in this time. But at the same time, if you don't know who's who, you might be confused by certain things in this movie, to say the least. And if you're not into the sort of films where, you know, you get a peek behind the curtain, you get to see the chaotic, high-octane nature of putting on a TV show, putting on a live TV show, or making a film, then this film won't be for you. But I personally love those kind of TV shows and movies. Those kind of TV shows or movies where you get to see the peek behind the curtain, not just a peek behind the curtain, a full-on reveal behind the curtain, and how, you know, the chaotic and high-octane nature of making something like this, making a live show, making a film, or making whatever. You know, it's one of the reasons 30 Rock, the TV comedy that was created by Tina Fey, worked for me so well. I mean, 30 Rock in a way is kind of you know, it's its own version of SNL when you think about it. It's its own version of how they did SNL, and I think Tina Fey actually got her start in SNL, so there we go. And I think my love of watching films and TV shows about how they made the film and TV show started with 30 Rock, and has continued with watching many TV shows and films over time. Hopefully that made sense. Not sure if it did. Basically, I love films and TV shows about the making of films and TV shows. But when it's a dramatized version of that, like, I'm not talking about a documentary. I mean, I would love a documentary about the making of a film or TV show, but at the same time, I love when it's a film like this, which isn't a documentary, but is a dramatized retelling of the 90 minutes, the chaotic 90 minutes at that, leading up to the very first Saturday Night Live episode. And I thought this film was exhilarating to watch. There was an energy with it, and the energy got you engaged from the get-go and didn't let go of your engagement, didn't let go of my engagement throughout it. Almost 2-hour runtime. I thought the performances were all brilliant. I mean, I don't know, I haven't seen loads of footage of some of the performers, some of the actors that the characters are playing in this film. If you follow me, with some of the actors that I haven't seen loads of footage of the people behind, and the people on screen of the very first SNL episode. but I felt that the performances were authentic, and I loved Gabriel Bell as Lorne Michael, this person who, on the surface, he's trying to keep everything together. He's trying to say, yeah, it's all calm, it's all fine, but don't worry, we'll get to 11:30 and everything will be smooth sailing. But you can see behind his eyes, and you can see in certain subtle things he does with his performance, that he is terrified and he is very stressed about what's going to happen, what's happening with this very troubled production. Of the very first SNL episode, I thought Rachel Senner was great as Lorne Michael's wife at this point. I thought she brought a grounded nature to the film, and I haven't seen Chevy Chase in a lot. I'm not a big Chevy Chase fan, if I'm being honest, but I have seen him in the likes of Community. I thought he was actually one of the best parts of Community. I was really annoyed when he left Community because I thought he was brilliant in it. Anyway, I have seen Chevy Chase in things in my time, even though I'm not a big fan of him though. And I thought the guy who played him in this film, I don't know who it is, but the guy who played him in this film was so good. I believed him as a young Chevy Chase. I actually felt like I was watching a young Chevy Chase because of how much he looked like a young Chevy Chase and how much he embodied that role. Dylan O'Brien as a young Dan Aykroyd is also great. And the guy who plays John Belushi, I think his name's Matt Wood, brilliant. There were so many moments in the film where I felt like I was watching a young John Belushi. He was that good. All the performances are really, really good in the film. All of them are great even, but those are the ones which really stuck out for me. I mean, a lot of the female performances did work for me as well. A lot of the performances from the women in the cast of the film did work for me too, but I didn't think that the female cast got quite as much screen time, with the exception of Rachel Senner, who gets quite a bit of screen time in the film. I would have liked some of the female comedians that you follow in the film to get a little bit more screen time, because I didn't feel they got enough. I felt the film was more focused on the likes of Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, and I forgot his name is now, but yeah, I felt the film was more focused on the male characters at the point I'm making, and I would have liked there to be more focus on the female characters. That'd be one of my criticisms if I was to say so. But at the same time, watching all the cast play this SNL cast was thrilling in a way, and I'm not a fan of SNL. I've never really been interested in it, but the thing is about this movie, it made me interested in SNL. It made me appreciate SNL in a way that I hadn't done before, in a similar way, similarly to how A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan biopic which I reviewed earlier this week on this channel, made me appreciate Bob Dylan. This new Saturday Night Live film titled Saturday Night made me appreciate SNL. It made me appreciate how they actually make this work. The end of the film, I was like, oh, I get it. I get why so many people like SNL so much. It's still not for me, but I get why so many people love it. And I just loved the energy of the film and the tension throughout. There's so many moments where it's like quick, interactions between characters, but you feel the tension. It's so well directed from Jason Reitman, and it's not like his usual direction. Like a lot of Jason Reitman films are slow or move at a gradual pace. I'm not saying that's a criticism of them. Open the Air is a gradually paced film. It's not a fast-paced film, but I think it's probably his best movie. But yeah, Jason Reitman, he does something different with his direction in this film. It moves at a really fast pace. I mean, the film is, in the end, trying to cover the 90 minutes before SNL, and actually the film is about an hour and 49 minutes. It's about an hour and 49 minutes. I think I actually got that correct, if I remember correctly, when I looked it up on Google earlier today. But the film is slightly longer than 90 minutes, but I didn't know that going in, and it flew by because of Jason Reitman's direction, because of the cast and how good the acting was, and because of the music, which was a great job at, keeping you engaged and keeping the tension flowing throughout, because of the writing. This film is written by the same guys who wrote, it's written by Jason Reitman and Gil Keane, who also co-wrote the last two Ghostbusters films together. And I enjoyed the last two Ghostbusters films. Yes, I even enjoyed Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I think that's an enjoyable, not great, but enjoyable film. But man alive, their writing with this film is far better than it was with the Ghostbusters movies. Like, their writing is sharp, it's to the point, it's funny, and I mean really funny. There's quite a few moments where I was laughing and I didn't quite realise how much I was laughing, and I also didn't realise how much I had this smile on my face until the end of the film. I wanted to see more of it. That played my other big criticism. I wanted to see more from this film. Like, it ended, I was like, oh no, I want to see them recreate the very first SNL episode, because I haven't seen the very first SNL episode. And I want to see this cast that I followed in this film recreate that first SNL episode, and I want to see all the behind the scenes stuff that went on with that first SNL episode as well, because, yeah, in the way that this film is done, because I was just so into it. Like, it ended, I was like, that was it. I want to see so much more, you know, and I always think that's great when a film leaves you wanting more. I wanted it to be longer, and I suppose that's my criticism, but also it's a good thing about the film when you think about it. Yeah, God, it's so good. It's fiercely entertaining, in my opinion. And as somebody who's not an SNL fan, I sat there and I was just eating up this film, because I love films which show the chaotic nature of putting something on, you know, making a film or making a TV show, or putting on a live TV show at that. And I thought this film captured that high octane energy, the high octane chaotic, and that is an important word, chaotic, there, because this film is very chaotic. I thought it captured it perfectly, and I don't know how true this film is. I haven't really looked it up, but I can imagine this is what it was like. You know, there's an authentic feel with the film. It looks like it's a film that was plucked out of the 70s in a similar way that The Holdovers did. The Alexander Payne film, which came out a couple of years, or came out last year in the UK, actually. Yeah, that film literally felt like it had been locked in a vault from the 70s, and they got it out and they released it in cinemas in the past couple of years, you know? And this film almost feels the same. The way it looks, the grainy look of the film, the setting, the way that 70s America, the way that 70s New York, I suppose. Is 70s New York? I think it's 70s New York. You correct me if I'm wrong. But the way the whole 70s aesthetic is created in this film, it worked for me so much as well. I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm so glad that I did, because I was afraid that I wasn't going to, because, again, I'm not a fan of SNL. I'm not from America. So I was afraid that a lot of the references were going to go over my head. Some of the references did, but for the most part, I sat there completely enthralled in the film, completely into it, and completely absorbed by it, and really just enjoying the hell out of it. So yeah, I loved it. And so all in all, I'm going to say that Saturday Night, I'm going to say that I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Again, it's not without its flaws. It's not without its flaws. And I do wonder how I do wonder how people in the UK are going to react to this film, because that was one of the things I was wondering going into it. It's like, is this going to be for me? Because I'm not American, and I do feel that the film is geared more to Americans than, say, European audiences, you know? But at the same time, like I said before, I do think the film does a good job at explaining who's who if you don't know SNL, if you don't know SNL too well, like I didn't before seeing this film. And God, I love a film with an energy that's so well paced, and it is well paced. Yes, it's a fast moving film, but there are also slow moments. There are moments when you get to, you know, sit there with the characters, when you get to relish what's going on, when you actually get to live in the moment, which is something which came out earlier this week, didn't do. God, I did not like that movie. And funnily enough, this film moves at about the same pace that Here did, but it does everything that Here ought to do. I mean, it's a bit of a weird comparison actually, but Here moved at such a fast pace, and yet it's a film which all takes place at one, you know, it all takes place from one angle. But you don't feel like you're there with the characters, because it doesn't let you live in the moment, oddly enough. Whilst this film somehow did that. And I love the way the camera moved. I love the way it was directed. There's just so much I loved about the film. And I'm really looking forward to watching it again. Yeah. I loved it. And again, that's coming from somebody who is not a fan of Saturday Night Live, and has never really been a fan of Saturday Night Live. And so, all in all, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more in this podcast today, Saturday Night is an 8.5 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Saturday Night, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. And look forward to many more podcasts and many more videos coming very, very soon on this channel. As I already said, thank you so much for watching or listening to this podcast. And I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.